gentleman from Illinois, Mr. LaHood, is recognized to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all the witnesses for your testimony here today. I represent a district that's heavily based on agriculture and manufacturing in Illinois and know the value of a robust trade agenda and how that affects our economy, particularly our farmers, our small businesses, and the entire economic apparatus, and particularly in a time that we continue to suffer from reckless spending and growing inflation. Finding new markets, new customers, new opportunities is really essential for our U.S. producers and businesses, and has to be a top priority. But listening to many of my colleagues today, I share the frustration with the current Biden administration that we're almost 2 years into this administration and we don't have a substantive trade policy. And I think that's reflected in what we've heard today as it relates to Taiwan, and really a lack of engagement when it comes to FTAs, market access, TPA, consultation and communication on our priorities with Congress. And I pulled up this article that I read from July from the Wall Street Journal, and the title is Biden's Missing Trade Policy. Allies and rivals are striking new deals while the U.S. loses ground. It goes on to say, while Biden dithers on trade, Pacific nations continue to strengthen trade with each other and China. China is stepping in to fill the gap. It goes on at the end to say, Mr. Biden's trade abdication is all the more puzzling given inflation and the risks of recession and interest rates that are rising. And I think about that, and it seems like the Indo-Pacific region and our allies there are craving U.S. leadership. They want U.S. leadership to step in, to play a role, and to be a leader. And again, the administration continues to put out contradictory trade policy or messaging, and very, very confusing messaging. And so, having said that, Mr. Wu, I want to ask you a question. If you listen to what Xi Jinping in China says, what do they say? He loves to say democracy doesn't work, you can't find consensus, they can't do anything, and you have to be more like us. And so there are economic rival in so many different ways. They have a plan to replace us, right? That's their goal economically. And here we are without a cohesive trade policy as it relates to China. And so you talked a little bit earlier about a number of our allies and their relationship with Taiwan. Can you talk about the Chinese malign activities as it relates to allies, whether it's the U.S. or others, that try to engage with Taiwan, and the level of extortion, coercion, and really, coercive activities that China engages in?
Certainly, Congressman, I'd be happy to do so. It ranges across the board, right? The most overt example was what we saw China did with Lithuania, right? Lithuania looked to deepen its ties with Taiwan. Lithuania, like Taiwan, faces existential threat from an authoritarian neighbor. In the course of doing that, Lithuania is also a member of the EU itself, and China blocked imports of certain goods from Lithuania, but not only that, also European goods with Lithuanian content. It can take other steps, even in cross-strait relations or with other allies in the Indo-Pacific. We've seen it just slow down regulatory approval, raise issues about food safety standards, things along those lines. So it can be anything as overt as what we saw with Lithuania, down to anything as subtle as just really slowing down the discretionary authority that the regulatory officials have.
And can you talk in general, I alluded to the Wall Street Journal, but talk about the lack of U.S. leadership when it comes to the Indo-Pacific region and where it goes.
So I think, as I mentioned earlier in response to the question, on Taiwan, I think USTR has stepped up in engagement in revitalizing the TIFA, which had been left dormant for quite some time. I think with regards to the other area, right, the administration is taking is with regards to IPEF and corralling other folks together to work on a comprehensive type of approach. What's not been part of the equation has been the market access types of issues that I know that some others here on this panel think is also important as part of a trade agenda. The 21st initiative with Taiwan is a stepping stone to clear the low-hanging fruit on especially the regulatory issues that are, I think, absolutely critical, but also on finding ways to work together on standards in other areas that I think, as I noted, allude to in my testimony, right? It's not about tariffs for many sectors, although for agriculture it is, right? I absolutely agree with what Mr. Baining highlighted, but it's about coordination on those fronts.
Thank you.